Hello, I'm Ira Kirschenbaum. I am the editor and publisher of the Journal of Orthopedic Experience and Innovation. Tonight, we have an exciting open mic topic session entitled Building an EI, an Efficiency Infrastructure. I'd like to thank our sponsor and advertiser tonight, Ospitec. More about them as we go on. We have a superb lineup of faculty this evening to discuss this concept of an efficiency infrastructure, which I firmly believe in and is critical for the survival of hospitals and ASCs. So I'm going to start off. I'm going to ask all the faculty to please introduce themselves, where they are, and their relationship to this topic a little bit. I'll start with Dr. Alexander Saw. Alex?
Well, thank you, Ira. Great to be here. Great to be with this group of faculty and happy to speak on this topic because it certainly is very important, as you said, both in the main hospital and with the emerging markets in the ASCs. It's happening to every surgeon and every community. So it's a very pertinent topic. And I'm a hip and knee surgeon out in Fremont, California, in the Bay Area. Do over 1,000 hip and knees a year, and so we have what we thought was already a very efficient program. But when you look closer, we always realize we could be even better. And started doing outpatient joints in 2014. We have a surgery center across the street, and as we're increasing volume there, it just becomes increasingly more obvious that we have to be even more efficient with the number of trays we're using, the number of cases we're getting through, the number of people going through pre-op and surgery, and then the recovery room. All the things that we take for granted in the main hospital just gets highlighted in the ASC if we are not truly efficient. And so a lot of it requires really an honest look at ourselves and our processes, including the surgeon. And that's why I look forward to talking with this group and sharing what we've been doing, but learning from them as well.
Excellent. Oh, thank you. Dr. Sebastian Rodriguez-Elizalde. Sebastian, could you give us an introduction?
You nailed that name, Ira. Good job. Well, yeah, my name's Sebastian. I'm Canadian. I'm here in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, north of the border from most of you. Like Dr. Saw, I'm a hip and knee surgeon. I currently work in what's considered a public hospital or in a hospital type setting. We do have ASCs or ambulatory centers starting to creep into Canada and the infrastructure. But for a long time, that has been something that's sort of been most hips and knees in this country have been sort of hospital based. I think it's really interesting talking to my American colleagues because as they've transitioned to ASCs, a lot of the financial constraints that we in Canada have experienced for decades, sort of creeping into the minds of my American colleagues. So measuring and being cost conscious and how to optimize, efficiency so you can optimize the business aspect of your ASC is something that on a fixed budget here in Canada and a sole government provider model, we've sort of been attuned to for a while. So I think two great healthcare systems that are obviously on paper very different initially are actually sort of meeting in the middle now and have a lot of similarities in different regards.
Excellent. I really appreciate that. We have Jhanvi Solanki, also from Canada. Jhanvi, are you available to introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, my name is Jhanvi Solanki, and I'm Vice President of Clinical Programs at Humber River Health. And my journey with efficiency pretty much started as a part of COVID, and as Canadian hospitals were significantly scaled back, still needed to deliver patient care with quality patient experience, and really trying to deliver. It started with things like cancer care and things like that. And then I had the opportunity to sit at our provincial tables to really shape the future of reopening surgery back in Ontario. And so that's where my journey with efficiency really started, and was able to take a lot of those learnings and best practices and apply them to Humber. And proud to say that really teaching this in universities in Canada, but also imparting our learning with Dr. Rodriguez and also a lot of Canadian centers as well.
Excellent. And no stranger to Joey open mic topic sessions, Lacey Dyer. Lacey?
Hey, thank you again, Ira. Appreciate you having me on board. I'm Lacey Dyer. I'm VP of Clinical Operations for Surgical Investors and Advisors, and we're a management company that manages we call ourselves a boutique management company. We seem to have a niche market in the joint venture where we're helping the hospital systems understand the efficiencies of an ambulatory surgery center. My efficiency began early on in my career. I was fortunate enough, my father was an orthopedic surgeon and truly was an efficiency person, talked about how to make things better for him. His practice wasn't in the ASCs yet, but sort of helped me develop that. And then working through other management companies and understanding that ASCs truly, because of their payment structure, need to understand how to be efficient with time, money, and supplies. And that's been our focus.
That's excellent. So we're going to start with diving into this right away, and I'll start with Jhanvi, if you can, to tell us an idea of what really is an efficiency infrastructure. What do you, from your point of view, what do you feel that really is?
So an efficiency infrastructure really is not that much different than a really strong operational model. It really focuses on things like quality and patient outcomes, patient experience, efficiency and effectiveness of operating room time, of resources, timeliness of services, and also sustainability of all of those changes that we make. And so really taking that, all of those elements and making every single minute count, every single minute much more efficient in the sense that how are we using that time? What are we doing with that time? And how are we making, how are we getting our return on investment on every single minute? That's really how we've really structured our efficiency infrastructure at Humber.
Interesting. Sebastian, you're in that system. All right. Tell us a little bit about the idea of alignment of the goals of all the people on the team. You know, how's that work out where you guys are?
You know, and I think that's a great question, right? Because as surgeons, sometimes we're really just focused on surgery and ourselves, right? And often as surgeons, you know, it's a lot of type A personalities, and generally we're always thinking, oh, if everything else ran better, my day would be better. I'm fast, but it's the cleaners, it's anesthesia, it's like admin, it's the nurses, and we never look at ourselves. And we have to think, you know, the efficiency and the delivery of healthcare isn't just the surgery, but it's all the players around you at the same time. So I think how it's affected me, you know, I had the privilege of doing my master's here in Toronto in health administration. It really opened my eyes that if you want to deliver better healthcare as a provider, you have to widen your lens and your scope as to the people that are involved in the delivery of that healthcare, including patients, and all your allied professionals. And if you truly want to create efficiencies, you know, you have to bring everyone together. You know, there's that age-old quote of if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. And I think, you know, part of our journey at Humber was really getting all the key stakeholders, everyone from nurses to preoperative administration to VP of Clinical Affairs, administration, even our surgical reps, and having them understand and see a different model. When we went to go see, you know, Charlie's operation in Atlanta, I had the privilege of also going to Belgium to see Dr. Christophe Korten, who also ran a very high efficiency model, and being able to show the people that you work with what's possible if everyone's aligned and has the right goals, and how to make this sort of something where, you know, we can do better work, high quality work. And at least in our system in Canada, which does have constraints fiscally and time-wise, you know, how do we deliver better care for more people in a timely fashion? Because being able to be more efficient in Canada means addressing important things like wait lists, you know, which aren't as big a concern down south, but like in Canada, they're very real concerns. And so if I know I can do more surgeries and the quality of that surgery is just as good, if not safer, with the right protocols and reproducibility, and I can address more patients in a given day, and over a given year, our institution can help treat more people, I think that's truly creating efficiencies in the system.
Alex, I'm going to ask you two questions. I'm going to ask you one, what do you feel is in it for the surgeons? And in this efficiency team that Jhanvi and Sebastian talked about, who are the weak links in your experience? First of all, what's in it for the surgeons, and who have been the weak links?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think as you embark upon this, Sebastian already mentioned that to really be efficient, you have to look at yourself. And so it does start with the surgeons. This isn't something foreign to surgeons, and especially orthopedic surgeons. We're always trying to figure out how to be more efficient, how to be faster, how to be quicker, how to be better. So this is something we're used to, and we're trying to do that in our area, which is obviously surgery, but we're always trying to do it as well with the nurses, the turnover, the pre-op holding, right? The pre-op clearances, the recovery, the PT, right? We're doing all these things, but as surgeons, do we really belong being there, right? A lot of surgeons, when they're doing same-day surgery, they talk about how they had to sweep the room and clean the room. They had to wheel the patient into the OR to be more efficient. Surgeons, we want to do that, but we shouldn't be doing that, right? There are plenty of other people who are doing that. So as a surgeon, we're going to reach a limit where no matter how efficient we want to be, we can't do everyone else's job. And so that's where having the right infrastructure, like what Jhanvi was talking about, is really so critical. To me, what that means is having a protocol or a platform, whether it's a digital solution or something that everyone on the team can refer to and know that that's working 24/7. It's not just working when I'm present in the OR, right? It's there the day before when they're turning over the trays. It's working the day after when the reps are bringing the implants or cleaning the implants. I mean, it has to be something that's ongoing, even when I'm not present. And that's where these infrastructures are so important, where everyone can refer to it and know that they're still accountable for their particular job. So for the surgeon, to answer your question, is it makes our life a whole heck of a lot better. We're achieving the goals we want, but we're not having to individually do it. We don't have to check and double check everyone else. They're being accountable for the jobs that they should. We can see it. If we have the right system, it's all transparent and we're able to see who's doing what and maybe where someone's falling short. But they are responsible for their own duties. The team is really functioning as a team with each individual doing their part. So as a surgeon, we can focus on what we want to, just the surgery. We don't have to do all those other elements. And so to answer your second question, where's the hang up? Where's the hold up? My initial gut response was it's going to be the support staff. The nurses are not going to like knowing that they're being watched. The people cleaning the rooms aren't going to want to know that we know their times, right? SPD is not going to want to know that we know how efficient they are. But what's surprising is people who love their job and work with you in these high efficiency programs, they like the challenge. They want to be good at what they're doing. And so they actually like the transparency just as much as we do. It selfishly helps us be more efficient and achieve a better goal faster and better. But for the individual staff members, they have accountability for their work. They take pride in it, and they actually achieve even better goals in the end. So the hurdles I thought were there with the staff, Ira, I can tell you we have not seen, to our surprise.
Wow. Lacey, I'm going to put you on the spot, as I often do, and say, we call you from the Bronx, let's just say, and say, listen, we need to implement this. We want to be like Jhanvi and Sebastian. We want to be like Alex and Asa. How do we do it? How do we do it? You're a management consulting firm. Where do we start? We're getting 4 joints by 3:00. That's not the Charlie 12x12 that I know.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying we get that, but I just, for example, if we were to do that,
Yeah, well, we certainly meet with the group and talk about what are their goals. You're talking about the 12x12. I have plenty of people that say, I don't want to work that hard. I don't want to do that. We just talk about where do you want to be? You want to be efficient. Nobody wants to stand around and waste time. That's not even smart. So we talk about where are we going to get to? Where are we now? We have to have data to show where we are now. You can't move forward if we don't know where we're starting. So we certainly, our company really does sort of mandate that we use Ospitec as it's a simple, easy, reliable data. We're not worrying about somebody clicking a dot, clicking a button, agreeing on when they come in a room. And we take the original data. Where are you now? Where are the areas we can improve? Our view going from the very beginning, I learned it from an anesthesiologist many, many years ago. The best time to make improvements is between in the room to incision time. So what are we doing? Where are we losing that time? What's taking so long? You talk about pushback from staff or physicians. We don't see a lot of pushback. What I see is people going, it's surely not me. I'm here. I do everything. I'm always where I'm supposed to be. So you get that data and you show this is where we're missing. We're either missing you or you're not, these things are lacking. And then do it incrementally. I will tell you, I can't make a change overnight. I have to have buy-in from the surgeons that want to, support the management structure and, holding people accountable. And sometimes your best worker, what you think is your best worker, may be a problem. So we have to hold people accountable and make movements. And support from the owners and the physicians is key for us to make those improvements.
So I'm going to eventually ask all the faculty to give us some stories of some successes and some failures. But before we do that, I'm going to ask Jhanvi a bit in her role. What tools and processes have you been using since the beginning that have been working? I'm not interested right now in the ones that have not been working because I know what ones they are. That's the ones we're using. So we'd like to know what are some of the tools you're using across the board,
So again, one of the things that we did in the beginning was exactly what Lacey described, and it's really just really scripting out what outcomes we wanted, and the outcomes determined the tools that we used. And so some of them were measurement tools that we used, some of them were patient tracking tools that we used. But I would say we categorized things into sort of 4 buckets, and we had several different tools that guided our culture as well, that fell into these, that were driven by these 4 pieces. And the first bucket was accountability. So review of data very frequently, looking at metrics that made sense, because very often we look at metrics, we're trying to chase lagging indicators without using leading indicators or balance measures. And that's often a mistake that we make in quality culture, where we look at a static metric and try to change it. But it really is about sitting down and understanding what is it that we're trying to change and how are we going to change it. We also looked at a category of interactions. So looking at dialogue, conversations, where did we need to script interactions? Where did we need to stop conversation? And where did we need to automate those flows? So those are the pieces that we looked at, which also stemmed out of a lot of intense workflow mapping. So we mapped our current state workflows and we leaned out waste. So wherever we felt that there was excessive steps or it was too complex, we reduced the complexity. And then we mapped out where we wanted to be in the future. And we have to say we're very grateful for our Atlanta site visit, because it really helped us imagine what that could look like. And also looking at the Belgian model as well. So we were able to blend the two. The third bucket for us was operating mechanism. So what were we going to do all the time and make sure that for every single category that we had an operating mechanism for every failure point. And so, for example, the first time that we reduced our trays and debulked them, we had to actually go back and do all of these exercises. And when you're new to that kind of new to those kind of exercises, it's not things that are front and center. And so we went back and we made operating mechanisms. So every single time we were trying to recreate this, we first created this with hips, then we went to knees, and now we're doing this with shoulders. So looking at just recreating those mechanisms. And so that was really helpful. And then finally, we looked at procedures. So every single procedure that needed to be followed, there was a form of standardization. And as much as our surgeons don't like standardization because everyone is so special, we had to actually go and tell them, sorry, but you're not super special. But you all are collectively, because if we're able to do this, it will be better. And so really a lot of that was dialogue that happened one-on-one in group settings, and then driving that culture piece. And what started to happen is, it's like anything, when you start to shine a light on something, things naturally start to get a little bit better. And then you start to drive a culture where everyone becomes interested. And we had a willing participant in Dr. Rodriguez. And so once he started, we actually had a whole fleet of 15 orthopedic surgeons that followed suit. And that was really a really big win for us to have one of our star surgeons start one of these projects, and then we had everybody follow suit.
That's great. We had the honor of having Professor Susanna Galani from Harvard Business School give our grand rounds recently, and her expertise is in studying payment and compensation structures that are non-monetary. So maybe we can talk a little bit, especially from our Canadian friends. We'll start with Sebastian first, and then we're going to pop to Alexander and then Lacey. How do you motivate people in your area to buy in to this dream that Jhanvi has laid out so nicely?
That's a great question, and people ask that a lot. And I know the last symposium we had, I actually talked about this, and I was actually just at a dinner earlier today where people asked me the same thing about how do you get your nurses to buy in? And I think, I heard this at the Canadian Orthopedic Conference, and I think it's a great quote, right? Because you can incentivize people with a lot of things, including money. But I really think that you have to instill a mastery. So if it's for nurses, it's like you have to take the role models of the best nurses and say, how do we mimic that? The best surgeons, what are those surgical techniques? The best way to, even if it's to clean a room, or the best way to optimize a flow process, and take your winners or your champions, right? And really embrace that as a model. After that, you need to empower those people. So the people that are doing their jobs feel like doing their jobs if they're really good at it, so they have mastery, if they're empowered to make the changes that are critical to their day-to-day. So for us, our scrub nurses were the ones who, and I didn't think of this, but it was Jhanvi who empowered them to say, like, you guys lean out the pans that we're going to do, and we're going to reduce our pans a la Belgian model, and just like Charlie. And how do you think we should do this? So they felt the value of being included. Their expertise was optimized because they're the ones who are handing the instruments off and understand what's used more and what's not used more. So by empowering them to make those decisions and being project leads, I think really gave them the satisfaction of their work. Then finally, after you have mastery and empowerment for people, you need to have value of their work. So at our site, people were knowing that, look, we're the site lead in Canada that's doing high efficiency ORs. We're the role model hospital that's going to teach us other people. And people are going to come ask you to say how we did it. And look, instead of helping 4 people today, we helped 12. And knowing that your work has value and helping, our socialized system, I think was greatly beneficial. So it's not for everybody, but if people don't have that passion, and if you can't garner it with those 3 sort of key skills, I think that's a shame. But I think if you find the right people that'll gravitate to that, those are the people that'll change your culture, your OR, your flow, and your efficiencies.
Alex, in the very laid back area of Northern California, um, how has the culture of motivation been cultivated? Oh, you're on mute. You're on mute. You're on mute. Yeah.
Sorry about that. I think Sebastian's covered it incredibly well. We've tried various things to incentivize, and certainly monetary incentives certainly is the first thing to go to. But here in California, number one, it's hard because there's always a competitor nearby who's willing to pay more. You're always just chasing your own tail. And in the end, if someone doesn't really take pride in their work and enjoy their work, it doesn't matter how much you pay them, they're in the end not going to be as efficient as you want them to. So really the driving force has to be that they take pride in their work, whether it is because you're a learning center, you're going to teach other people, or they just individually want to be better and reach the best they can. I think that having them involved and letting them know that they can be involved in the process to indeed work smarter, but not necessarily work harder. So, right, if you can find ways to be more efficient for them, suddenly their lives are easier. Better ways of sterilization, using sterilizing fewer instruments, being more right. Our efficiencies in the OR help them as well. It trickles down. So it's really important to have a system that we believe in and they believe in and see the benefits, because not only does, at least in our case, money incentives it does not work all the time, but also it's hard to find good staff in California. There's a shortage of people, shortage of staff. There's temps, there's travelers, you're hiring people. So it is very important not only to have a program that people can find value in their work, take pride in their work, but you need to retain them as well. So we're looking for a long-term solution. So I think everything mentioned so far is really key to having that long-term success.
Lacey, would you like to add a little bit about the culture of efficiency?
Sure. I mean, certainly, what I find is nurses really do want to do a good job. Your staff does want to do a good job. If they don't, you need to weed them out. I mean, that I agree. We cannot pay them into efficiencies. That's not the way to go. One thing that worked for us in the ASC is we cross-train. Everybody learns everybody's job. I have nurses that do SPD, techs that do SPD, pre-op PACU, and everybody started realizing what's entailed in those jobs and how can we make it easier. It was amazing. Once the techs were in SPD, they learned they needed to be a little bit better about cleaning their instruments and, making that job easier for somebody else, and really establishing the culture of, we're going to make this run better. Your quality of life is going to be better because in the ASC, we get to go home earlier. We get those jobs done. That's quality of life. We've all learned, I think everybody learned from COVID, that's what they're trying to head for, is really their quality of life, because they're getting paid well. Just so you know, it's not California that's having trouble. We're having it all over the country trying to get staff, just so you know.
It was very interesting. I was speaking to a close friend of mine who is actually on this session right now. I don't know if he'll want to ask the question, but I'll ask the question myself first, and maybe he'll pipe in. In the United States, at least, a lot of insurance companies pay based on a variety of reasons. And one of those reasons is time and difficulty to do a case. And in a strange way, maybe a strange way, maybe an obvious way, if we're showing that somebody can do 18 joints by 2 o'clock, will the insurance company now devalue joint replacement and say, we're going to pay less? Now, I have my own opinions on that, and but I thought that was a very important insight he shared with me. What Alex, what do you think about that? The fear of the insurance company says, "Wait a second, you're getting 17 times. I should pay you $500 a piece."
There's no question that's happening already. Even if we don't do anything, we see our reimbursements are getting slashed every year. Another proposed cuts coming anyhow, and that doesn't even have to do with us being more efficient. So whether we're doing it or not, like it or not, they are cutting us now. But to your point, it's happened before. So when you look at ACL surgeries or any other orthopedic surgery that used to be in the main hospital, they started going to outpatient, and indeed their reimbursements did start to get slashed. And the other things I worry about, Ira, it's not just the number of surgeries you do, but it's the time we do it. Often these insurance companies or other auditors will send surveys, and I don't know if orthopedic surgeons know that when we fill out these surveys and we tell them we can do a knee replacement in 16 minutes, we are very prideful and happy we can do that. We are actually hurting ourselves, because then these insurance companies get this information. They say, oh, surgeons claim they can do a knee replacement in under 30 minutes. We are hurting ourselves when we try to boast too much about what we can do. So that is very real, that we have to be careful about what we say. And hopefully AUKUS and the Academy can help our orthopedic surgeons really understand the information we're giving to others, because they are basing their reimbursements and decisions on some of this very bad data that we are, as orthopedic surgeons, are volunteering to them, unfortunately. So I think it is a real concern.
So Ira?
Yeah,
so
Kevin
Ira,
Flasher. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So you opened up my can of worms. I'll take the credit or the lack of credit for the question. I'm the colleague behind the door. So, Alex, I want to say to you, the ophthalmology department, ophthalmologists made that error years ago. If you go now, there's 20 to 25 operations. They do left eye, right eye, whatever it is for cataract. And it is our obligation, you're absolutely right, to never say, we can do this in 6 minutes. I hate that. We want to do it till it's perfect. And whatever drives that individual surgeon to get that one and done, so they never come back to the operating room, God forbid, for infections or anything, is what we should strive for. So I understand, Charlie and dear friend, and everything about efficiency, but I would say that I would not like to publicize, as you say, that I can do a total knee in X amount of minutes. I will tell you that years ago, elbow reimbursement went down, and if I can do something in 10 minutes, I sit in the operating room for the next hour and let the clock tick, because I'm not letting, and then the nurse records that operation took an hour and 10 minutes. Woo! And I'm going to get paid more, because time, unfortunately, by insurance is reverse. Those that work fast, we can therefore pay less because it can't be a hard operation. And that's not true. But until we convince people it's about the patient, the directory, not otherwise, we're heading into an interesting time where there's a mix between wonderfully doing efficient and things and honestly, but be careful. I would not boast that you can do something in a short period of time. Do it to perfection and always think about the patient. That's my 2 cents, Ira.
All right.
Remember, it's never
Lacey?
16 minutes. I mean, I'm sorry. It everybody can boast about that, but let's look at the room time. We still have to get them in, get them prepped. We have to sew them up, get them out. I get it. You get to walk in and do your thing. Who was it? Cooley that did heart surgeries in the round? They weren't, he operated 15 minutes, but it wasn't a 15-minute surgery. So
Yeah, I mean, one of the counter arguments to it is that what I think as surgeons, we may need to change the story. And the story is not what's going on in the OR. It can't be based on what the alignment with the payer decides, but what this patient needs. And arthroplasty surgery starts at the first visit you see the patient and obsessively ends 3 months, 6 months, 9 months later, some episode of care. Insurance is defined as global period as 90 days, but in reality, we follow these patients quite closely for a couple of years, for sure. And I think one of the failures of some of our societies have not been to tell the story that joint replacement surgery doesn't take 30 minutes or 60 minutes. It takes 2 years. And that's what you're paying for. And that's kind of the story. Unless anyone has more comments on this particular part, I'd like to go back to actually specific things about time. And I'm really fascinated by what Charlie DeCook said on the last 2 sessions ago, where he said, it was surprised everyone, said, it's not about turnover time. It's not about utilization rate. It's about wheels into incision. All right. And, Jhanvi, you are running a whole big operation there. Surely turnover time has something to do with it. Wheels into incision. What's your feeling and how important is time tracking in it to your operation?
So I would say that is the crux of all of the quality improvement, I would say, because every minute that you can track, that's every minute that you can lean and every minute that you can actually make useful. We have been doing this for many years, actually, since our new Wilson site has opened. And essentially, wheels in, wheels out is a very crude measure. And one of the things that we did was we actually broke it all down. So we broke it down from nurse in room, setup time, tear down time. How long did it take the nurses to set up each pan and tray, and how long was it taking for SPD to get everything ready and prep and all that sort of stuff. So we really did track every single minute. And then wheels in, wheels out, we used as an overall measure so that we could compare ourselves to our counterparts, which would be most published literature, as well as sort of our neighboring hospitals, and we actually have consistent provincial metrics that we measure ourselves against as well. So we have a problem at Humber. We like to be very competitive and we like to be number one at everything. So if we choose a metric, we need to beat everybody. So it's a bit of a problem, but what can I say? It makes us better. But yes, time tracking has been sort of the secret sauce to a lot of our success.
Sebastian, how do you keep up with Jhanvi's demands on you? How could you?
It's difficult. I mean, that's realistically where a lot of this came from. Was last year we had conversations at our institution about doing more cases at our hospital, and I said, like, look, physically I can't do more days. Like, I can't. I'm busy 5 days a week. Like, I don't really want to work weekends post COVID now. Like, if I don't have to electively, and how do we optimize that? And so that's when a lot of the swing room scenarios and high efficiency ORs came from, where I'm like, well, I'm already operating on Thursday, but instead of doing 4 or 5 cases, like, I can do 2 rooms and do more cases. So that's where that was born from, and where a lot of the pressures came to sort of think of different ways, as opposed to using the standard model of X amount of joints and just adding more days. You run out of days in a week or a month or a year to do cases, right? And so how can we do better within the resources we are given? I think for me, that's what efficiency boils down to, right? Is that, everyone talks about how many cases they can do, 12 by 12 or 14 by 14 or whatever. But I think the key is, if you want to be more efficient, you have to do more within the constraints and resources that you're given. And for some people, that might be a 10% increase or 15% increase. For some people, it could be double if you have an optimal swing room model and you can even do even more. I think the goal that we should challenge all of ourselves is to see how can we do better within the boundaries that we have without expanding more resources and needs. And I think that's key to, your system is obviously suffering nowadays from what we've been suffering from years of, like, getting paid less and less and less to do the same procedure. In Canada, the government has been reimbursing hospitals at a set rate, which has actually decreased over the last little while, and is at a fixed rate. And whether you do a hip or knee replacement anywhere in the province of Ontario, you're all funded sort of the same rate. And that includes your hospital stay, the physiotherapy, the implant costs, and all the necessary costs associated with surgery, except for the surgeon fees. So those costs, have been driven down and standardized. And whether you have a high BMI patient or someone that took a long time to operate on, or a very easy patient, or you used a cemented implant or you didn't, that the hospital gets paid the same. And so you have to find as many efficiencies at every single layer to optimize that to be profitable for the hospital. Otherwise, they're not going to let you operate if you keep costing them too much, because just financially you can't do it. So I think that's the challenges on the hospital level. I find it very interesting on the physician level for my counterparts in the US about how you're getting paid less and less, by the government and insurance companies. And I agree with you of changing that mantra of, like, efficiency isn't about how fast you can do things. It's about how good the patient quality care is. And I think that's got to be the messaging, is like, when people say, well, you operated very fast, I'm like, no, like, we were given the opportunity to help 14 people today when we did 14 hips. It's not how fast I did the hip. We're able to service the public better and address the health needs of more people in a day. That's the story you have to tell. It's not about how fast you did it. And in fact, most high efficiency models, and if you look at Charlie's data or all these providers that do a large number, their complication rates are actually lower than people that just do casual surgery or mixed surgery. So the more efficient you are, you shouldn't focus on how fast it is. You should focus on your outcomes are more standardized. You have better outcomes. People get the exact same care because it's such a well-oiled machine that those people are just in and out so well. They're doing so good. Those would be the stories that I would tell. And you're able to service more people in a given time frame. So less about the actual time and more about the good you're really doing.
We have a question in the chat. Real pleasure and honor to have David Crawford here from JIS. Dave, you want to comment a little bit on your comment in the chat if you're available? It's hard to put you on the spot so quickly.
Oh, no worries. No, it's just the conversation about, don't publish what you do and all this stuff. The reason that we can do, and I, give all the credit to my mentors, Adolf and Barney, Keith Barron, and Tom Mallory before that, is that we're efficient because we built a team. And the problem is there's no metric in the U.S. to get reimbursed for having more staff in the OR, having people come in and turn over the rooms, while the nurses doing other things, training your PAs, us doing other stuff. So it gets back to the previous conversation, but I don't think we should be ashamed of being efficient and doing things quickly, because my PA, we don't say a single word during surgery. They know exactly what they're doing because we train them, and the turnover time is because of that. So nothing groundbreaking, but I think just that when we get to the conversation about time, efficiency, it's a team around us that makes it happen. And unfortunately, right now in the U.S. at least, there's no way to get reimbursed, for building that team around you.
Yeah, I think that's a critical point. You spend a lot of time in research and design of your operating room, and that's not put into some type of reimbursement. It's not put into wraparound dollars or not even related to the case. It would be interesting if there was a model that if you were to reach the efficiency that Sebastian and Jhanvi's competitive group has, then you would then therefore get some bonus on that, and that would be good. Lacey, what do you think about that general idea of the work that it goes into to be efficient?
Well, just to be clear, Sebastian, so the ASC in the US, that's how we're paid. We get one fee. So we however we make that efficient is better for us, kind of thing. Again, I think that the time is something that we shouldn't necessarily focus on. I completely agree with you. Why would we be punished for doing something better? It should be outcome based. And what we're seeing in the US is we're now getting paid on quality and outcomes. So patient satisfaction, those are the rates that whatever you get there, that's going to affect your payment, and your outcomes, quality outcome markers are going to make the payment, different for all of us. That's
great.
Yeah.
Yep. I'd like to call on Alan Resnick, who always has some very wise viewpoints. Alan, you want to come online if you're able to?
I'm here. I'm here.
Okay, there you are. Okay, good.
I don't know if you can see me. I'm here. Yep. Yeah, I did put something on. My dog is going to make us crazy. Anyway, let me just let her. I'm sorry about that, guys.
No problem. This is Cinema Real here. It's not a problem. Not a problem at all.
Sorry about that. Anyway,
no problem.
Yeah. So I mean, it's a math. We always talk about optimization. Optimization is always a math problem. You have all the inputs and outputs, and then you can do the calculation. I really haven't sat down to try to figure this out for anything, but it is doable that you could say, if I expend X more and I do Y more cases, the reimbursement goes up by Z. You make a curve. There's a point where that curve starts to go back down. And I think the driving goal to make everything more and more efficient and expending a huge amount of money to do it is going to hit a wall very quickly for all of us. If it hasn't already, and we don't even realize it, just because the surgeon can do 16 minutes, there's 5 hours of extra FTE work going on behind the scenes. So there is a concept in business school they talk about as managerial accounting. And the managerial accounting is the idea that we have a goal, we make an economic measure, and that economic measure drives all the decision making, but we don't really understand the ramifications of that vis-a-vis the total cost. And the most common example is given is someone decides that the value of the widget is based on how many man hours goes into it. They decide buying more and more machines reduces the total man hours, and they're going to make it cheaper. And then they spend a huge CapEx, and they have people running around fixing the machines, and they do the calculation at the end. They end up it's costing more per widget now than it used to when they factor the CapEx in. So I think hospitals are probably there, and that's why a lot of hospitals are doing all these things and losing money. They throw a lot of CapEx at a problem, and they don't really understand how to factor it into the value and the cost. So that's it. I don't know if there's anyone's ever done that calculation. That's what I was wondering.
Yeah, am I able to respond to that?
Sure.
Economic measure and diminishing returns, that's like what I do every day, because given our ministry model, we are capped. We have a volume-based cap on everything. And when I become much more financially efficient, or even volume-wise, it's not like I can actually substitute like other models where the more work you do, the more you get paid. We actually don't. We're a pretty tightly capped model. Again, that's where maximizing those models. So there's a couple of pieces about, quality, and those points have been talked about, so I won't talk about that. But again, that's where from an efficiency standpoint, you really have to look at things like case mix and how do you keep yourself much more efficient? So again, here, this is the concept that we're really driving home today is really economies of scale, right? Like the more that we're driving these pieces, the more we're getting efficient, the more we're driving down and leaning down waste. But again, as you do that, you're getting dinged on funding because you're not getting funded, and you're getting you also have a lot of empty time if you don't have the same volume to replace that with. So again, when you're building a model, it all comes down to what are you replacing those man hours within an operating room day. And then from a funding standpoint, I think better, faster, cheaper is the mantra of every single payer at this point, whether that be insurance or ministry models or publicly funded models. And I think what we're seeing more is a big trend toward bundling care, where the payer no longer wants to care about every single segment of care. They want to sort of say, here's like $11,000, go fix joints or whatever it is. And it's not a very big margin, but in many ways, it allows the freedom within that system for everyone to come together and make certain aspects more efficient, so then you can get the outcomes that you need. So I think there's a way to take what currently exists as inefficiencies and as disincentivization within the system, and turn it into things that could be favorable for our surgeons as well as our organizations. But a fair bit more work needs to come together, and like a coalition of the willing really needs to band together, because we can definitely make that even more profitable.
I'm going to throw one more story in just to go along with this question. I interviewed the head of the South Korean Orthopedic Society about 4 years ago for the academy, and I asked him, what do you do about bundles, and what do you do about length of stay, and where do you send the patients after shoulder joints? And I actually wrote an article about it in AOS Now. I don't know if anyone had seen it a while ago. But the upshot says, what are you talking about? And I said, what do you mean? What am I talking about? So, like everyone leaves like the next day or 2 days. What's the limit? He goes, there's no limit. I mean, it's cheaper to stay in the hospital than it is to stay in a hotel. Why would we even care? In fact, after about 2 weeks, we usually tell people they have to politely leave, but we don't have anything about length of stay. It's just not a cost factor. And I was like taken so far back by his comments, and especially that it's cheaper to stay in the hospital and hotel. And then if you start to peel it back and think about it, we have added so much to the bed cost that has nothing to do with the real cost of operations, that our measure for what we're doing and what we're making more efficient has no bearing on reality. And you just look at the hospital and say, okay, the hospital's full on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, empty Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And the staffing is 12-hour shifts, and we do all these other things to make all that happen to be efficient. But the truth is, when the hospital's full every day with an even number of staff, it's much more efficient to run that building, right? So the bottom line was the cost of staying in the hospital for a patient who just had a total joint, if you wipe out all the extra stuff that's layered on top, is probably nominal. And the first 2 days is all the cost, and the next 5 days is almost free. And because the building is still there, it's not going anywhere. So that's what I'm saying, is I beg the measuring point. If you make the measuring point, it's $1,000 a day to stay in the hospital, when that has no bearing on the reality of the real cost. We're making giant decisions about society and medicine that have no bearing on truth. And the South Koreans like to, like, we don't even do that. We don't care. So that's all. They throw that in there.
I think it's a great point, Alan, because we often confuse charges and what we're getting paid for with actual costs of doing things. You can go over to the avant-garde people, and they will tell you that, charges are not costs, and costs have more to do with time-driven, activity-based costing, and versus, a building that's there. We are at 8:54, and I would like to, Pat, do you want to say something, or just speak well in what you said in your comments, Patrick Maiden?
No, I was just making the point that it doesn't seem logical, just because somebody is capable of doing something faster, that they should be paid less than somebody who takes longer. You shouldn't be penalized for being better at something. But by going out and saying we can do it in 16 minutes, why should you be paid, like, forced to then suddenly have to do it at that, or get paid for that amount of time?
Right.
That wouldn't be logical at all.
I agree with that. And I think we have a lot of agreement here today. And I will pass this on to the Senate committee. No, we'll be all right. What I would like to do, I also want to say anecdotally, we have some summer fellows that are doing research at my hospital that are actually looking at wheels in to incision. And they're finding out some interesting things. We probably could do this study better if we had Ospitec. Okay. But we did find out that we coined a phrase called the patient dormancy rate. In other words, at any point in time when the patient is not being touched or not doing anything, something, that is wasted time, and that is correlated directly with wheels in to incision, is when the patient's not being attended to doing something. And so that is a very interesting finding that we're going to present at Ortho Summit this year. What we call the patient dormancy rate, for lack of a better term. A lot of times they wheel the patient into the room. Someone waits before they get it on the table. Get it on the table. Anesthesia waits before they position it. The anesthesia then goes back and reads field and stream for a while, comes back and does the spinal anesthesia. So I'd like all of our faculty to sum up a little bit, give us some thoughts of a few summation statements. I want to give a real shout out to the watch party who's going to stay on afterwards, the watch party at Columbus from Ospitec, who are masters at time management and time analysis. I'm going to start with Lacey. You want to say a few words? We're miraculously at 8:56. I do not know why the time goes so fast. We could have gotten 3 joints done during this whole thing.
Yeah, you're not kidding.
Yeah, guys.
I'll say my wheels in, wheels out data. We really watch for flip rooms, so we're trying to be efficient. That is a desire for every surgeon, is to have flip rooms, and then we need to show that they deserve those flip rooms. Do we have patients sitting and waiting because we don't have a surgeon available to come over? That's been a big study that we've been doing to make sure that our efficient surgeons get flip rooms. Our non-efficients, a 10-minute turnover is much better used if we can run 2 rooms than sitting a room open for 20 minutes waiting on a surgeon to come over and get that started. So that's where Ospitec has helped us a bunch with our optimization of the usage of the rooms. Been a big draw for us.
Great. Alexander Saw, you want to sum up a little bit of your feelings about this topic of the efficiency infrastructure?
Yeah, I think that as we had a great discussion tonight, I think time is obviously the easiest element to evaluate in our ORs and to get towards efficiency. But I think I want to highlight what people have also said, which is don't lose your quality. You can only be truly efficient if, yes, you're faster, but you're also better as well. You don't want to just be quicker and not do a good job. So for all the people out there starting to embark upon this, don't forget about the quality, how hopefully this process makes you even better. That's really important. And then secondly, simply, you don't know what you don't know. You need a platform. You need something. Ospitec's very helpful to really shine light on things, that questions you haven't asked yourself or your team. Where are you wasting time? Where are the inefficiencies? You need something that we can really look at that, make it objective, and that everyone on the team can understand. That really will help take you to the next level, in my opinion.
Awesome. And Sebastian, could you sum up your experience in this area a little bit? And tonight,
I would just love to echo what Dr. Saw just said. I think you don't know what you don't measure. And I think that really was last year when we embarked on this journey, and me personally, it was that was the biggest thing. You have to measure. And I encourage people to measure now. Like, before you implement change, know what you're starting with, right? Because everyone changes everything, but you want to know really and brutally honestly what you are doing, you as a surgeon. If you don't look at your own data and outcomes, look at your own data and outcomes. Look at every facet. Look at the anesthetic times, look at the nurse times, look at the opening times, and measure that. And if you have a platform like Ospitec, I think that's invaluable. And hopefully we're going to have something like that in our hospital very soon. But if not, even if you're just starting to try to make those changes, you have to measure. And so you can only get better if you measure objectively and if you have some good data to start with. And I think also measuring costs, one of the other things that blew me away was that, the price breakdown in Charlie's locker room was how much a pack of sponges cost, how much, an extra scalpel bait cost, or different drape costs. Like, we as surgeons often are pretty privileged to have a bunch of stuff, but do we know the actual cost of everything? And I think, if you're in your own ASC, you're going to be very cognizant of those costs, but you have to really know, how much is this costing me? How much is it costing the institution? What sacrifices or what things can I give up a little bit on to help minimize those costs. So I think measure, find out your costs, and that's your journey to start to being more efficient.
Excellent. And Jhanvi, you have the pleasure to bring us home. So with some final words.
I would say efficiency infrastructure is a balance. And it's not always about 12 joints by 12 for every single facility or every single surgeon. It's about making every single minute count. Sometimes it's about adding an additional case, and sometimes it's about 12 joints by 12, and that's totally okay. But sometimes all I would say to everybody is that you have to sometimes go slow to go fast if you're trying to implement some of these things. Take the time in the beginning to do all of the planning, understanding the players, understanding the metrics, understanding really what you have to move. And I think we've talked a lot about lots of different things today, but I think what we have to ensure that we remember is it's about the patient outcomes and it's about patient experience. And if we let those drive everything, then our efficiency infrastructure will continue to evolve and it will continue to be better. And we will be able to overcome the barriers of payment structures as well.
This is awesome. It's 9:01. Except for the watch party and the Joey team. I'm gonna excuse everybody so they can go back to the life they were living. I want to thank the faculty tremendously. This was a great session, and all the open mic participants. So thank you very much and good night.